Employer Federation SEIFSA is hosting the 2024 Metals and Engineering Industries Ministerial Conference. The Ministers of Finance, Energy, Transport and Labour will address the industry on the road ahead. The sector is a 900 billion rand industry that employs thousands in various categories. The conference is looking at opportunities that can reignite growth and contribute to the re-industrialisation and development and economic growth. SABC News economics reporter Katlego Legodi is at the conference for us, and he joins us now. Thank you so much, Katlego, for joining us. So, of course, lots of ministers there to speak to the industry. What's been said and what can we expect?
A very good afternoon to you, Nombu, and to our viewers at home. It's been 81 years, if I can say, of SEIFSA in operation, and we see them today just taking stock. And they're doing this through a reflection with various of those ministers that are operating within this particular space in terms of the industry that they fall under. So today we see various of those ministers just here as policymakers engaging in various of those particular panel discussions. Earlier on, we saw the Minister of Transport being one of them, the Deputy Minister of Finance being one of them, David Masondo. We also saw the Minister of Employment and Labour, Nomakasazana Meth, being one of those that have been interacting with the role players that are here. This is a sector that is very, very pivotal in terms of the economy, and it has seen stumbling blocks and challenges over time. And we see them today just taking stock of those challenges and how then these policymakers can come through private and public partnership to ensure that there is economic growth, and the issues of job creation is at the center of how then we see these two sectors approaching the economy. I'm going to bring into the conversation with us now the Minister of Transport, Barbara Creasy, who just stepped off the podium in terms of that panel discussion that you had with the various of the ministers, and we're just taking stock in terms of the structural challenges that have existed over time. You gave a glimmer of hope in terms of the interventions and the work that has been done at Transnet in terms of turning that state-owned entity around. And we hear most of those people here are just talking about how the sector has experienced a little bit of slow growth, stumbling blocks, and those challenges that would need then this private and public partnership to come through so that we see the economy then championing this particular sector. Welcome to the SABC, Minister. Lovely to have you on with us this afternoon. Maybe give us a sense and reflect on how important is it that we see the public sector, the private sector, policymakers just sitting on the same table to just look at how then we grow the economy.
Well, I think, as you've already said, the steel sector is a critical sector of our economy, critical in terms of current jobs and job creation potential, but also a sector that has been deeply affected by low levels of infrastructure investment. From the side of the transport sector, we are obviously trying to improve on our infrastructure spend. We are pushing Sunrail to put out the remaining contracts which need to go into the procurement phase, because we understand that road construction obviously is one of those sectors that uses steel. We are, of course, in a process of recovery in Transnet, and the kind of infrastructure recovery that we require in the rail sector clearly is also of great interest to the steel industry. We have indicated that it is our wish to be able to begin private sector participation in terms of operators and also in terms of those who would want to invest in our infrastructure while it remains in public ownership. We would like to move forward before the end of the year with Transnet to present their network statement, which is really the menu and the price in terms of third-party participation. One of the issues that the steel industry has been raising with us is how do we ensure, as we engage in these economic reforms, that we are making sure that there is local procurement and local procurement that benefits the steel industry. We think that the existing private sector participation framework that National Treasury has included in the Public Procurement Act is of great assistance here. But I think that for me, one of the takeaway lessons I'm taking is the importance of looking at strategic procurement in the work that we are doing.
Let's talk about the war room. You really gave us a sense of the work that has been done at Transnet, and most of the people that are here would not want to see Transnet regress or go back to those days whereby then there have been concerns around rail and the lack of movement in terms of goods. What are we doing? How are we doing where that is concerned? And are we seeing at least a little bit of move in terms of ensuring that the concerns that are raised by the steel sector are really adhered to?
Well, I think we know that industry needs us to be moving about 250 million tons of freight a year. At the moment, we've plateaued at about 150 million tons. So, of course, Transnet has a recovery program. It's that recovery program that has turned the corner from the very bad days we saw last year. But I think that one of the things we understand is that within Transnet itself, there needs to be more integration and more urgency placed on the recovery program. And that's why at the Transnet AGM, a decision was taken to set up a war room that meets every day and looks at all the moving parts and how everybody is working towards the achievement of a higher target in terms of freight movement. At the same time, I think we're very clear we can't do this on our own, and that is why the freight logistics strategy that was adopted by Cabinet in December indicates the need for third-party participation on our network, and it's really to achieve that third-party participation that we are trying to put out the network statement and also establish the private sector participation office under the Development Bank of South Africa.
And we know now that the ministry falls under, the Transnet falls under the Department of Transport. There's been a little bit of work in terms of just focusing some of these interventions. But one of the things that you highlighted at the podium was the issue of inclusivity in terms of approaching the way that goods are moved from rail, even in terms of what we see then on our roads here. Is there a space for just all of these integrated, plans to come together, and so in a way that we don't see then us doing away with the movement of goods from the trucks, but also we champion rail as one of the sectors or spaces that will see the goods move a little bit better?
Well, I think a modern economy needs an integrated transport system with rail, both in terms of freight and passenger, as a backbone. That doesn't mean that rail is the only means of transportation. We know that in the freight sector, trucking is a very important component. I think that we would want to move away from the situation where trucks are carrying iron ore and manganese. Those kinds of things should be carried on rail. But there are enormous opportunities in terms of logistics repacking once containers come off ships, and of course the whole process leading to containers going onto ships for export purposes. I think that is where the trucking sector, we need to be developing a niche market. Of course, we understand in the passenger sector that our taxi industry plays a vital role. So we're not trying to exclude anybody. What we're trying to do is to build an integrated system where everybody has a role, and that role is appropriate to the distances that are being covered and the products that are being carried.
Minister Chrissy, thank you very much for giving us your time on the SABC this afternoon. The Minister of Transport just breaking down some of the things that were discussed there at the podium. This is a ministerial conference, and we see various of those ministers also just coming through. Later on in the afternoon, we expect the Minister of Energy and Electricity to be one of those that will be addressing us here, but also the Minister of Finance as well, in terms of those high-level conversations here. And Nompu is just making sure that we bring both of these sectors together, and there are those frank talks to ensure that there's transformation and jobs created for those that are looking towards the steel and metals industry. Nompu?
Indeed. Thank you so much, my colleague there, Katlego Legodi.